No, not yet.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome, and in many cases, welcome back to Coffee with the Legislators. My name is Carter Fong. I'm the Executive Director at the Dickinson Area Chamber of Commerce, where we aim to connect business and community with our elected and appointed officials, because a well-informed public is in everyone's best interest. I was supposed to be the backup quarterback today as moderator. John Oderman, their family, is home due to illness, so I'm back in from the sidelines as your moderator again today. As we begin, we'd like to thank our hosts at the Dickinson Area Public Library, along with our sponsors for the day, including Able and Consolidated. They make it possible to provide some refreshments to you today. We do have pastries from Baker Boy and cookies provided by Infinity Real Estate, and coffee. Please help yourselves. We welcome any member of the media who may be present today as well. To our audience, please note that today's event will be recorded and rebroadcast on Consolidated Channel 18 and shared on the Chamber's YouTube page. As you note this, please silence all your cell phones at this time. Thank you. As Dickinson's population has grown, so has this event. While District 37 is entirely within city limits, nearly half the population of District 36 now resides in Dickinson as well, while District 39 covers the western edge of Dickinson to the Montana and South Dakota borders. Our elected and appointed leaders have constituents here and elsewhere, but they've chosen to be here today, and we appreciate their time. Today's event features the following: Senator Jay Elkin of District 36, Representative Vicky Steiner of District 37, Representative Mike Lefor of District 37, Representative Mike Schatz of District 39 was invited and has an open invitation to join us in the future, but is not here today. We do have with us from District 39, Greg Kessel. And we're going to give Greg an opportunity to join the lineup as well. Thank you for being here. And our special guest today is Senator Don Schaible of District 31. During the first hour, we'll invite each of these individuals to update us on their work in Bismarck, 15 minutes at a time. During the second hour, we will open the forum up to public questions and comments limited to 3 minutes per individual. We will conclude by noon. At this time, let's pause. I want to add two more things. First of all, making many of the arrangements for these folks to be here today, Rich Wardner is working hard. He's kind of serving as usher also for the day. I want to give a nod to other people who help make this event possible and then make sure we leave this space better than we found it, which is hopefully what we are all here to do. For example, Mary Vern Easton. After last week's program, I watched her quietly and without being told to do so, just lining up the chairs straighter than she found them. Thank you, Mary Vern Easton. Thank you to others who helped make this event possible. And at this, you're going to see me scrambling a little bit, making sure all of their technology is working the way they wanted it to. So I will work on that. But batting first today, from District 31 from Mott, we welcome Senator Schaible.
Well, good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. Rich asked me to do this, and even though I'm not from this, I live in Mott. My district goes all the way to Mandan and all the way to the South Dakota border, so I'm that. But I think our issues are your issues, and I think most of the things are safe. I have a bill, Senate Bill 2066, which is a property tax idea, and they would ask me to explain that, so I'll go ahead and start with that. So next slide, or do I got a way to do that? Or okay, so you know what's this deal with tax relief? I mean, one of the things is the state's been blessed with a lot of money, a lot of opportunities here, and one of the things is that I think all of us believe in is that when we have this money available, that we should keep it in the public's pocket. It's their money. We should make a conscious effort to make sure that we provide relief in taxes and that we be prudent with our spending. So the biggest question today there is, there is money available, so let's provide tax relief. Okay, so what is the best form of tax relief? I mean, there's a lot of different ways that we could do this. I mean, you could lower sales tax, you could lower income tax, you can lower some more property tax, so, what is the best form? And that's kind of the discussion we're having now. The other question is when we start talking about tax relief, the next question is how much is it that's appropriate? I mean, what is appropriate relief going forward? And it's not only that, but because whatever we do now has lingering effects going forward. So we got to be cognizant of what we're doing to our financial structure. And when we provide relief, we want to make sure that is sustainable going forward. And, so that's the thing is what is appropriate and is it sustainable? So that's, on the top of our minds too. Next thing is so when we provide tax relief, the thing is where do we receive that revenue from, or what are we taking a revenue away from? I mean, the thing is whether we take people's money or we just don't take the tax. You got to remember that when we don't take the tax, though, that we're losing a revenue stream that we have used or might need in the future. So there again, I mean, this year, yeah, we could do a lot of stuff this year, but going forward in the future, can we sustain that? And I think it's, we need to have a prudent spending plan going forward, just not for now, but going into the future. So next slide, please. The idea that I have and several others, I'm the prime sponsors, but this conversation has actually been going on since the special session when we did provide some income tax relief then. I stood on the floor of the Senate then saying, and I was against that somewhat because I thought property tax was a better solution, but regardless of that, I did say on the floor that regardless of what tax relief we have, I think the people in North Dakota win. Because when we decide to lower taxes and give it back to the people, I think that's a good idea, and that's kind of what we wanted to do. So, why would I choose property tax, and then why would I choose using the K-12 funding formula for our students as the mechanism to do tax relief? Well, a couple of things is, one of the things is our school districts are probably the largest culprit on your tax statement. If you look at your property tax bill, other than bond issues, I would say that schools usually account for about half of your property tax. So that's kind of why I use that. The other thing is, this is a mechanism we have used for quite a while. I mean, this isn't the first attempt. So if we're going to do something, and we like the system we have, it makes more sense to continue what we're doing with that than trying another formula. I mean, it's confusing at best, but let's try to keep it at least consistent as we can. Next slide, please. Okay, so, school funding, when we talk about school funding, you got to remember that, I think everybody understands that there's a per pupil payment, so there's an amount that goes generally to per kid. Now, that's very generic, and, you'd have to get into formula, and I don't want to do that, but basically, you get paid for the amount of students that you have. Of that payment, you got to remember that, there's contributions from locals, which is your property tax, and then from state. So it's a combination of that. So you can't just say that when you get this payment that it's coming from the state. It's a combination of local and state. Prior to 2010, the state contribution was 180 mills, which at that time was probably about 40 to 45% of the cost of the education. So, no, I mean it's the other way around. I think it was that the locals were paying about 55% of cost of education. What the other thing is that you understand now that we're at 60 mills. So if you'd look at 180 mills, and if the state hadn't did what it's done, and you base your evaluations on what you have today at 180 mills, that portion of your property tax would probably be 3 times as high now. I mean, so that's what we've taken over in the past. I mean, so, that's something we do, and we get into the fact that, you say, yeah, we've done quite a bit of property tax relief, but did you see it on your statement? And are we getting the benefit from that? And is other things happen with that? I think all of that's true, but you got to remember that even though we still provide that takeover of state funding for property tax. So that cost us $500 million every session for property tax. That's real, that's ongoing. So the state has done some stuff. So like I said, the state went from paying about 45% of the cost of education in 2013 when we went down to to 60 mills as your local contribution. The goal at that time was to pay for about 80% of the cost of education. A couple things that happened. I mean, you got to remember what happened after 13. Evaluations started going through the roof. So that kind of decreased down. So I believe right now what the state pays is about 72% of the cost of education, and the local contribution, your property tax, covers about 28% of the cost of your education. So that's what happened in 2013. We decided to take a bigger share of that. We went to 60 mills as what considered local contribution from your school district. That's continued, but as I said, you guys have seen evaluation increases and haven't seen a lot of that. I mean, it's creeped back up, and we go from that. So the bill I suggest doing is and I can go to the next slide, please, I think. What I'm thinking about is let's cut that local contribution to 30 mills. So that's where I said if you look at your tax statement and you cut about half of the school portion of that bill, and if the school is half of your tax bill, that's 25% of your total tax bill. So that's the calculation for that. I mean, everybody's situation is a little different, and that would exclude bond issues because those are voted on by the public. But the mechanics of what I'm suggesting is, so now the state would take over another 30%, 30 mills of that contribution. But, that's the relief. Okay, but this bill does other things also. One of the things we look at, the bill requires that a school district, at that 30 mills, that would turn into $1 equivalent. So one of the problems I think we have with property tax is the use of mills and the use of valuation. Mills are really confusing. I'll give you an example. I think the smallest school district in our state, 1 mill is equivalent to about $17. I think the largest school district in our state, 1 mill, is over a couple $100,000. So how do you use a system like that to do something like that? So what this bill does is that after we get to that 30 mills of this evaluation for this year's, that converts to $1 equivalent. So going forward, after that point, school districts at the board level can no longer talk about mills. So they can't just take evaluation increases and go forward with that. So, and the rationale behind that is that if we can get schools to at least admit that evaluation increase is a property tax increase, to talk about spending before they assess the taxes, I think that promotes discussion that says, look, we have to be aware of our spending, we have to own those decisions, and we have to relay it to the public before we do it, not just take the valuation increase afterwards and then, and say, well, we didn't raise your mills, but it still cost you 17% more. So, that's kind of the rationale for this bill is not only to provide relief, but it's also to change the mindset of our political subs, in this case the school board or school district, to consciously know that if they raise taxes, that it's a property tax increase. That might be necessary, but I think they should at least communicate that with the public, get them involved in the discussion, and at least decide that before they assess it, not after. So that's kind of a change in the mindset for that. There again, going forward with this now, if we go down to that, 30 mills would only be used that first year. From then on, it's $1 figure. Well, what happens going forward in the future? Of that 30 mills, there's only a 5% increase that they can take from that. So, and Jay is going to get into the funding formula, and that's confusing at best, but part of that is that all this stuff that happens is really a deduction from the state payment, and that, so now we would deduct 30 mills. Well, if evaluations would not go up 30 mills, so we say up to 5% of that, they would still get deducted that. So it's just a way of cleaning up and make it good. So it basically limits school district on that 30 mills only to go up 5%, which is hopefully a way to stop the creep of tax increases. The cost of this plan is $327 million, and this would eliminate about 25% of your property tax bills. Next slide, please. Okay, a couple clarifications I should make. Schools have several ways of authority to assess tax. And the per pupil payment is one of it. We actually, like I said, we use 60 mills as a calculation. Now we're talking 30 mills. They don't have to assess that, but we will deduct it from their payment anyway, so all of them are going to do it. I mean, that's the thing. So it's just a way of calculating it. But there is other assessments that they can take. They have authority to take 10 mills of additional assessment for that for miscellaneous. There are special assessments like bond issue, which people have voted on. They get to take that. There's tuition, there's asbestos, there's school deferred maintenance with their building fund, I guess it's called. They can take up to 10 mills and maybe expand that with a vote. So they can take 10 mills of that. So they have other authority to assess tax. And that's very simple. What I'm talking about is only that per pupil payment of the 60 going to 30. This does not affect all those other assessments of that. I would like to, suggest that the state has done a lot of property tax relief in a lot more than just this area. The per pupil payment is just one area. I mean, we do a lot of other tax relief for that. Just in schools, there's school construction loan, there's emergency repair loans. These are all at 2% loans. Well, if we don't offer these, where are they going to get it? It's going to be your property tax. So if we can offer these loans and get them at a very reasonable rate, that's property tax relief. None of that figures or those calculations are added into all the figures that you hear, but they're there. I mean, and then you look at the other forms that the state provides relief for all the entities. We have buckets for water. I mean, Prairie Dog is a pretty good example of property tax relief also, because if the state doesn't infuse that money, where are the political subs going to get that? I mean, so there is a lot of property tax that's happened for that. And, and like I said, we can have the debate, we're going to talk about income tax, and that's fine. I mean, the best thing that we can have, I mean, how wonderful it is a state can decide what kind of tax relief we're going to have. I mean, most states can't even consider giving back tax, and our biggest problem is to say which form is the best. And I don't know what's going to happen going forward. I would have to guess. I'd say some kind of blended form would come forward, and that's great. So if we're talking about that, so I mean, just thank goodness that we're in a state now that can have these arguments, as far as which way is the best way to give people back their money. I guess there's questions later. So with that, thank you, and I'll be around to answer questions later.
Next up, Representative Vicky Steiner, District 37.
Thank you. Vicky Steiner, District 37, Dickinson. And thank you for the opportunity to be here today, and thank you for caring about government to come spend a Saturday morning and listen to us. I appreciate that. I brought some handouts in the back. I have a report that comes out every week, and it's the majority report, House Majority Report. So there's copies in the back for you if you'd like to see them. If you want it sent electronically, let us know. We also have the budget status, legislative forecast. That can be sent electronically. That comes out. And then I have what I'm going to go over on income tax relief, some of the bullet points in this green sheet, green for money. We all like money, income tax relief. And this long spreadsheet from the tax department, and I'll go through that, and it's the last three columns that tell you how much tax you're going to receive, how much tax relief you receive from the reduction of income tax if this goes forward this session. So, thank you to Senator Schaible. I don't have any problem with tax relief wherever it comes from. I agree maybe we'll have some type of blend, I don't know. The Senate really likes property tax relief through the school formula. The House is probably a little less enthusiastic, let's say. The House prefers a tax that we control, which is income tax. We have total control over it, and when we lower it, nothing else happens to it. It goes down, it stays down, and we don't have anything happening with it. So, the idea of income tax coming down comes from, we have 8 states, including South Dakota, our neighbor, have zero income tax rates. And they're finding that young people really respond to zero income tax. Also retired people who are deciding, you know, my one child is in California, one child is on the East Coast, let's go to Florida, there's no income tax. So we're finding that retirees are more mobile, not necessarily staying in the place where they maybe had a job for 40 years. So you do have people who are mobile. So states are finding that to be competitive for workforce, they should think about income tax. Now, about 6 years ago, we did what's called a REMI study, but it's just a fancy software study through the Bank of North Dakota. And at that time, 6 years ago, had we done greater than approximately $450 million of income tax relief, it actually showed that it would generate $450 million in increased investment in sales, and the state would not see actually any loss. And some of these states like Tennessee have found that, where they have significantly reduced or eliminated personal income tax. People take that money and they buy a boat and they have enough money to do other things with their money, but they reinvest it in their own state, and actually the state sees an increase in sales tax. You see other things that are happening. So it isn't always that you lose that money, because people take it and decide what they want to do and how they want to invest it. Maybe they start a side hustle and start doing a little business on the side with that money. So that's what we hope will happen with that. So 3 out of 5 North Dakota taxpayers will benefit from this flat tax, which is 1.5%. Currently, we have a tax that is graduated, so the lower end 1.1% tax, and the high payers would go to 3.9%. So we're going to get rid of that under this plan, and I think it's House Bill 1158. You can go to the next slide. And you would just have 1.5% for everybody. So and it can be a little confusing, because you can't just say, well, I made $75,000 last year, so what is it for $75,000? The way the tax department calculates it, you get some adjustments, and so you have that standard deduction, federal standard deduction, that has to be taken off. So if you look at the sheets that are provided, sometimes it's a little confusing, because we're not talking gross income, we're talking adjusted gross income, and I do have the math from the tax department that goes through all the math and the deductions, and there is a marriage penalty that you have to apply for, and we're talking about maybe taking that out of the form on tax and doing something else, so it's not so confusing. But you have to make sure you get your adjusted gross income they take your adjusted gross income, and that's what is used in their calculations. So that's why you can't add, the 44 and 44. It's confusing, because then you say, well, how come for 2 people married that doesn't match up? Because there's another deduction that comes for married people. So as confusing as that sounds, when you see the math, it all works out. But anyway, next slide, please. Now that I made that clear as mud. Next slide. The governor wanted that picture there. I don't know why. So I wasn't in it. So the states with the flat income tax, Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, they all have flat income taxes, and we will be the lowest in the nation, which we think is going to give us a competitive edge. I prefer zero. I'll make that disclaimer. Everybody kind of teases me, because they know that I prefer zero, because I think if we're going to eventually compete with South Dakota and the other states, and West Virginia the other day just decided to start going to zero as well. So it's very effective for workforce to attract people to your state. Next slide, please. And this is the biennial savings. This is not a one-year savings. This is just, you take the 2 amounts. It's on this sheet right here. This one, and it's in the back of the room if you want to see it. The first year in 2024, or 2023, I'm sorry, $282 million, $284 million, and $566 million total. So actually, if we did a blended and we did the mill proposal from the Senate, you'd have additional tax relief. You'd have we're getting close to $1 billion. So anyway, long story short on that, I have the math if you want to go through it, but just if you make $75,000 approximately, gross income, $75,000 on a single, and you have the minus standard federal deduction of $13,850. Their taxable income is $61,150, and then you would, if you want to go to the next slide, please. I know they're not going to be able to, I have one more slide here. Yeah, you just go back one, yeah. So I should mention too that our state's balance sheet is very strong, but we have to remember that we are probably going to have 4 good years coming, but the concern is on year 5, because eventually we're going to have so much gas and we can't get rid of our natural gas, and so the oil field will probably have to start shutting in. So we're hoping to peak at 4 million barrels a day, 1.4 million barrels a day, but that will start falling in about 5 to 6 years because of pulling back. Not that we don't have the oil, but just we cannot get rid of the gas. So there's the problem with the gas is causing people to think, well, we have money now, let's reduce taxes where we can. But trust me, if they need the income tax to come back, they'll bring it back. So I may not be there, but I would just say that I know people worry about that, and they say, well, we shouldn't get rid of the income tax because what if we need it? Well, in government, they can tax you. They have that power. They will bring it back. Trust me, if they need it, they'll bring it back. So if they don't need it, take the money and use it for your family. So anyway, right now the state's balance sheet is very strong. So let's go to the next one. And this is the governor's opinion, and there's difficulty with property tax because the state, I used to always say the state doesn't control property tax. The only way you can control property tax is to elect people who are going to pull back your amenities and lower your taxes. That's the only way you can do it. However, the state does have standards or regulations that we impose on locals, and so we do have our fingers in there. So we probably should do a study about how many fingers we have in there and pull our fingers out so that the locals can truly be just local control. But we do have our fingers on some of it. Next one, please. And so this is the property tax relief that has been done over the years. And one thing you hear is, you know, we've done this property tax relief, and we haven't always seen as much of the benefit as we were hoping to see. But I think schools have had have some challenging times. They have workforce issues for teachers. They have some challenging times, and I wouldn't put it all on the schools. I think that there's some things we can do to help schools, and that, you know, local government has pressure from people to provide more amenities, and sometimes they respond to that. So you don't always see all the property tax relief that's been sent back, but at least we've been able to send something back through the bills we've had. Go ahead. And this is the one I wanted to show you. And if you go to the first line, 2 single at the top, and you go all the way to the end, this sheet is in the back of the room, and it'll show you, and it looks like this. It's kind of on a legal size. And if you look at that, so if your tax liability was $772 last year, if this bill passes, your tax liability will be $262, and you will have saved $510. And what people will say is, well, my property tax is $3,500, can't you give me $3,500 worth of relief? Well, no, we can't. But we can give you part of that, and we don't control all of that. So maybe at some point we'll be able to do more, but right now this is what we can control on the income tax side. So this is the flat tax at 1.5%. Now some of the criticism you'll see is at the bottom, where they say, well, somebody used to pay $17,000 in state taxes because they were at that high 4% level, which is current law. And then now they're only going to pay $8,000, and so they got an $8,000 price break. But these are your larger filers that are in the bottom, and you want to hold some of your high-income people in the state because a lot of those have businesses. Some of them are passing through their company business through their the LLC. They're passing it through as a personal income. And you want to incent those people to stay with North Dakota, not to move, and stay with us. and everybody pays the same. So for that young person who says, you know what, I don't want to make $75,000, but in North Dakota, I can make $600,000 a year and everybody pays the same, and I'll pay 1.5 like everybody else, and I get to keep more of my money. So it's kind of that thought. But anyway, that's what I had on income tax. 1158 does provide broad relief on all categories, all sections of it. And with that, I'll be around if you have any more questions on the income tax. I wanted to get to one of my favorites right now. I'm really, really excited for this one. I'll move into my schools. So, we were able to visit with some teachers, and they had some concerns about schools. And there's about 1% of the students that have been having behavioral problems where they flip desks and throw feces, and the whole class has to be removed and the kids have to stand in the hall. It doesn't happen all the time, but it just happens once in a while, and it affects the other students. It affects the learning of the whole classroom. And they don't know what to do because they have a policy too where, if someone throws a desk, they just wait till they calm down. But learning time is affected, and how are we going to help the school district through this time? And going through our committee work, Mike and Representative Richter, Senator Dean Rummel. Dean is going to prime this bill. I don't think it has a number yet, but we still have it going through the system. And a superintendent or a school board member from West Fargo who's a new legislator, he's on the committee as well. And we have discussed, and also Representative Pat Hattlestead from Williston. But what we found is all the schools are at different levels with this behavioral problem. West Fargo is hiring 21 psychologist behavioral health people for their rapidly growing school. And they're way ahead of the game. Simley Junior High did a pilot about 4 years ago. And they did this thing where they put these kids in tiers, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Tier 1 is everybody, all the kids. Tier 2 are kids that something's going on at home, they're not showing up on time, they're not getting their homework done, and they're falling out of tier 1. And then tier 2 kids that something serious is going on with that student, maybe psychiatric problems, they're falling into tier 3. So Simley Junior High did this pilot, and it's been very successful for them. And other Bismarck schools have tried to replicate it, and it has not been successful in some other schools. So they analyzed why, and what they came up with was you need additional money to help the kids in tier 3. And maybe they need to stay out of the classroom longer until they can learn behavior where they don't disturb everybody else where all the other kids are trying to learn. So right now the kids just go out for a short time and they come right back in, maybe 1 or 2 days. And sometimes the other kids in the class are so worried about that desk getting thrown again that it disturbs their learning for longer periods of time because that student is back so quickly and they don't know if it's resolved, they don't know if they're safe. So it is affecting all students. This isn't just about that, what are we going to do about that 1%? No, it isn't, and it's not a criticism of the 1%. They have their issues, and we need to help them. So what Simley found was that it's absolutely imperative that the leadership in the school has to be committed to getting to know the kids. They got to know the kids, and they got to know when are they leaving tier 1 and going into tier 2. And when they go into tier 2, what is happening at home? Is there something we can do? Can we intervene? Do they need to see somebody, a counselor or a social worker? Or maybe they just found out their sister has leukemia. Maybe, their dog died, and they're taking it really hard. And what doesn't work is just to treat everybody like every day is the same for every kid every single day of their life. So some of these kids may move back and forth, but you need a principal and a vice principal who know these kids and they know what is going on in their heads, and then if they go into tier 3, then maybe we have to do what's called, and they have behavioral problems, then we have what's called maybe a school in a school where they can go and get help and get serious help until they're able to come back into the classroom. Now, if we don't solve this problem, what happens is the teachers are saying, well, I'm going to retire as soon as I can because I just cannot handle this and I don't feel supported. I really want to feel like I've got, the school board behind me and the superintendent behind me. So it's really complicated and it's a little expensive to fix, but I think it's worth the try because I don't think we can just keep doing things the same way. And it worked for Simley. So we have a pilot for Dickinson and for some other schools, and we took on we're going to take it to the whole state, and Dickinson would get some additional block grant funding, and of that they could, they have a lot of flexibility. They can work with a local counseling firm to do contracts for additional psychologists. Behavioral health analysts are very well trained and have doctorates, and what we heard was in our discussions with Simley was that the team, and with Pam Sagnas from Department of Human Services, is that the having a psychologist and a behavioral health specialist on a team talking about this child is moving into tier 2, what can we do? That expertise and support alone does so much for that teacher because she doesn't know all the things that could be done. Maybe try this, try that, try this. And that's the expertise that we need to bring into our school system. So it's not, I don't think it's in bill form yet, but, and I don't really want to talk about the numbers too much because they're fluid, but we're hoping, maybe, we hope to get some money for it, maybe $1.5 million per year, and we'll see it. It's supposed to go 4 years. We're not going to do it for 2, but we just hope that that it would look favorably upon the bigger schools. Are pulled out of the REA. The REA will get money too for the small schools, and they will share trainings, and they will share when they can and collaborate when they can. And then the small schools can work, and the large schools get these block grants so that they don't compete through the REA system, which I'm not that familiar with the REA. All I know is there's some competing things and whatever. I don't know that much part of that part. But anyway, and so the next thing I wanted to tell you about was a couple of things we're going through in finance and tax, if I have time. We have a adoption tax credit. We're post Roe v. Wade, and I want to do more for families. And there's quite an effort by quite a few of us in the Republican House to do more for families. I had the bill, no coercion on abortion, and that passed the House. There was only one no vote, a Democrat from Fargo. But no coercion on forcing someone to get an abortion, and there is a penalty for that if you do. And then the adoption tax credit, adoption costs approximately $10,000. If you owed any tax under the income tax proposal, if it goes, you would get a tax credit of $1,400. That's it's a carve out, and I'm still having a few arguments with my chairman about that, but it did pass 7-5 in committee, and I hope we can hold it on the floor. My chairman is not happy with the carve out, but anyway, and we have a carve out too coming with diapers and strollers, no sales tax on diapers and strollers. We also have a bill coming Monday for disabled employees. If the business owner wants to hire disabled, we gave them a tax credit of up to, it would be 100 people were eligible. The program is completely full. All these disabled people have been able to find work, and they take more time to teach them how to do the job, so we give a small tax credit to that business owner who's willing to take them on. So we're looking to expand that to 200, and my chairman of Finance and Tax, who used to be opposed to it, is now carrying the bill, or sponsoring the bill, priming the bill. And so I'm excited for that. We've got PERS retirement. For those of you who are on PERS, myself included, my husband worked for the state 10 years, so we get a small retirement check for that 10 years that he worked for the state. PERS retirement will be closing if the House plan goes to fruition, if we're able to do that. But it's on schedule to close 2025. We need to infuse some cash. Mike did a great job chairing the committee. We've been working on this issue since 2011. What happened was, in 2003, PERS was overfunded by 110%, and the legislature could not discipline themselves, and the late Representative Frank Wald said, don't do it. Do not take that extra money and give it back in benefits. And the House could not resist because it makes us popular, and it's very good for re-election campaigns. And we did do it in 2003. And Frank said, don't do it. But anyway, they did, and then it started falling. And so it started falling every session, and then we've tried to fix it, and there's been great resistance to it, but our young people want defined contribution. There are some young people who like defined benefit, no doubt, and the state has a fantastic health benefit, fantastic retirement, and they live longer. You know, our state employees live longer because they have such a good plan, and part of that is that's a problem for the plan because they don't die at 85, they live to be 95, so it's not a bad thing for the people, but I'm just saying for the plan, it's a challenge. People are living longer. So, Representative Mike Lefor, phenomenal chairman, to bring this to a close because it's underwater by several $billions, and we have to do something because honestly, it's your tax bill that has to pay that. And what they'll do, the court's not going to let us get out of it anyway. We can nibble on the edges on some of the small things we do with the plan. We can't declare bankruptcy because we have the legacy fund, obviously. So at what point do you just bite the bullet and say, we want to make sure this is solvent? So we're going to close that, and then it'll go to defined contribution, and it'll be a much better defined contribution for people. Also has portability for young people. So we're really struggling with turnover, and so we're hoping that'll help state workforce. Yesterday, the peace officers came in, and they want to be added to the BCI, Bureau of Criminal Investigation, defined benefit plan. And then the teachers' retirement fund wants to be able to offer an additional benefit if teachers come back from retirement. Right now, they don't get credit for their service when they come back, and so it will extend their liability in their plan by 1 month. So, you know, we probably will do that, even though it's, you know, it does extend the liability. I have some bills coming up next week. One, I took some heat on, and that's the obscenity bill, 1205. And 1205 is really about, you know, what kind of books do we have in our library, and is it obscene, and does it meet the community standard? And so I got called an idiotic, weird Christian, but, you know, it goes with the territory. And so anyway, am I getting close to my time?
About 10 minutes ago.
Well, then I want to go through my other things. Okay, so, but I'm around, and I have other information if you'd like it. Thank you.
Came prepared. We'll count on you to stick around for questions. Senator Jay Elkin, District 36, up next. What you need to know about him is he came prepared with a great presentation on a Apple device that has now been on my phone and my PowerPoint and now Google Slideshow. So forgive your chamber director for not being a tech expert. It'll look like a copy of a copy up here, but Senator Elkin, well prepared and welcome.
First of all, I want to thank you, Carter, and I want to thank the chamber for having me come today. Senator Wardner gave me a call the other night, and of course my wife answered and told him that I wasn't in the best of moods, and Senator Wardner said, you know what, I'll just make him grumpier. And so I put this together. Senator Wardner wanted me to walk on through the funding formula for the Dickinson Public School District, and so that's what I'm going to do today, and hopefully you better understand where the money comes from. This is a local contribution as well as a state contribution to the education of your kids. So we'll go to slide 2, and what it is, we take your average daily membership, and if you notice on here, your average daily membership, pre-K, normally pre-K the state does not fund. However, there are identifiable needs out there, and they're special needs, and those kids will be serviced by and paid for by the state as well. And that's what that's all about. Your kindergarten kids, of course, and the weighting factor is a 1. So we move that over, the weighted factor over, and that's on your right-hand column. You're going to notice that that's where your numbers are going to be for your students, your average daily membership. Kindergarten, those are identifiable numbers. It's 384, grades 1 through 6, 7 through 8. Those are all easily identifiable numbers. Then when you get to the alternative high school, and those are kids that they may have dropped out, they may have had a medical condition, and yet they want to come back and they want to receive their diploma. And in Dickinson, we have about 41.76 kids that are on that formula right now. So you take the total numbers here, and you end up with 3,847 kids for the 22-23 school year. Now we'll go to the other program adjustments. And there's weighted factors in here, and those weighted factors are to address kids with special needs, high-cost kids, because that's really what we're talking about here. We're talking about kids that the cost isn't the same as your average student. But we're talking about alternative high school. I'll take that as an example. These are kids that come back. They're being educated in a different format, different room, different area. And that is, we added 0.25. And what we're doing is we're trying to address those special needs and at-risk kid needs and high-cost needs through the formula and increasing the average daily membership. That's how we do it. And if you look at, but then you come on down the line, so I mean we can go through each and every line if that's what you would like me to do. But then we come down to the on-time funding formula, and you notice that there's a 93.1, and that's line number 12. And that is kids that came into the school during the course of the year, and it could have been September, I believe is what it would have been. But, and they're on a different formula as they come in. It's 0.7, and we count them as 65 average daily membership. Then if you notice, there's a spring adjustment, and that adjustment is because of kids that have left the school district. And we make that adjustment for the next year's payment, and that adjustment, because those kids were probably here for part of the year. And so we equate that out at a 0.6. And the reason for these weighted factors is that this all happened because of a lawsuit. And that's why the funding formula, and that's a number of years ago, the legislature ended up during the interim hiring a consultant firm to come in and help make these adjustments to where school districts were not exceeding money. Some felt that some school districts had too much money, and some school districts felt there was not enough. And but it's a funding formula, and the funding formula is really rather, it's simple, and yet it's not. And if you keep on going down on the right-hand column, those numbers, they add up to about 496 is what it is, I believe. But then you add that to your adjustment, or you add that to your average daily membership on screen 1 of the 3847, and your total membership then comes up to 4,344. Now the weighted factor is a factor that was put in there, and it's similar all the way across the state. And if I'm incorrect, but then you take it times the 10,237, and that's what we pay, the state pays. And you end up with a total formula payment of $469,000 and some change. Then we'll move down to, and here's where contributions from local revenue or other revenue, and these are counted against the payments that the school district receives. And these are going to be your in lieu of payments. And if you notice, your total revenue side and the apportioned revenue side are different. And what happens here is that the apportioned revenue side, these payments, 75% goes back to the state, and 25% is kept by the local school district. However, the total revenue side is different from the apportioned revenue side, and that is because your school district bonded and built a new school, and has a sinking in interest. And really, the sinking in interest is just, it's the payment against the school plus interest. I think that's the easiest way I can explain that. And so what happens is the differential is that the state allows the school district to keep about an additional 20% of those dollars that normally would be calculated on the 75% that goes back to the state. So the 305 and tuition is really, it's revenue gained from other school districts contracting into your school districts for special needs or services. It could be driver's ed. There's a whole host of other things, but primarily it's your school district is helping other school districts in educating kids with special needs. Now, I don't know where they're coming from. I did not look, but they could be coming from South Art. They could be coming from Kildare. If you take a look at line 36, that is the oil and gas revenue that is collected by your local school district. The electrical generation, distribution, and transmission, that is transmission lines, but a lot of that is the wind towers that are taxed in your local school district. Mobile home and other in lieu of taxes, and mobile homes are taxed at a different level than your residential, and so those taxes, that's different formula, and that is the taxes that come back on your mobile home, and they could be coming from game and fish, they could be coming from the homestead credit, they could be coming from veterans credits that are coming back into your local school district. And telecommunications is just what it is. It's microfiber, it's fiber optics, it's your telephone, and it's your Wi-Fi services. That comes back. And if you add up the total revenue that is gained there, apportioned revenue, because you're keeping 20% that normally would be calculated in the formula of 75% that goes back to the state. But so that calculation is there, and your middle column is how that calculation is worked. The 305 is then bumped down. This local school district is keeping about $60,000 that we grant back, and that's just because you built a new school, you have a debt to assume, and the legislature thought it was appropriate to help you in paying for that school. We don't fund it all the way, but we funded part of the way, or help you. And if you notice the 75% calculation, and that's the dollars that go back into the state. And that contribution from other local revenue that goes back into the state is $2.2 million. And now if we bounce all the way down, and I wanted to go down to formula adjustments, because that line will then move down to 33. And that's taking off of the state contribution. But we'll go through the rest of this. But then we look at the contribution from property tax. If you can back up, Carter, one. Go down one more. Your contribution from property taxes, and in Dickinson, your taxable valuation is $157 million. And you would take that times the 60 mils. So what you're really doing here is you're taking line 42 times line 43, and it's pretty self-explanatory up here, and you're dividing it by 1,000. And that's where you end up with property taxes that come back to the school district. This is your portion that you're paying to have your school, is $9,444,000. And that is then moved down to, on the formula adjustments line, go down one more. That's moved down to the contribution from property taxes. If you notice the total adjusted formula amount, that was lines 28, 29, and 30. You ended up with $44,469,000 to the school district. Now we deduct the $9,444,000 and the $2,214,000, and the state contribution to your school district is $32,810,000. That's about 74% of the cost of education in this school district, is what it equates to. And there's other things that go into play here, and I'm not going to go through that, but there's transportation that we fund, and there's a whole host of other things. But if you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them now. Okay.
There will be questions. I think they'll
That's
come up
it.
a little bit. Thank you, Senator Elkin.
Thank you.
Next from District 37 and the Republican House Majority Leader. From the moment he got here today, he insisted that his picture also be up on the screen. Representative Michael.
Thank you, Carter. Appreciate that. And I wanted to start out by offering an apology to Senator Wardner because I thought all majority leaders did was drink Diet Coke and eat potato chips while the rest of us did all the work, but that's not the case. I am truly enjoying being House Majority Leader. It is a tremendous amount of work. We have 82 Republicans in the House and wide differences in, well, thank you, Carter. I didn't think you were actually going to do it. Have a very wide variety of opinions on a lot of topics, and the job of the Majority Leader is to move legislation forward, to have the tough discussions in the office, to try and get things smoothed out. But I couldn't be prouder of the people that I serve with in this area. During the redistricting process, we made sure that we have another district here. So District 37 was actually made smaller because of the population that we have here in Dickinson. District 36 is a good chunk of Dickinson, East Dickinson, South Dickinson, and so forth. And District 39 is, the southwest part of the state, so you've got actually 6 House members and 3 senators that serve this area. And it's wonderful to have the team that we have. Representative Steiner has been my seatmate for 5 sessions, and I'm proud to serve with her. This is her 7th session, and we have Senator Rummel, who's doing an outstanding job. This is his 1st session. Senator Elkin, 3rd session. Representative Dory Houck, 2nd session, and Representative Gary Crate from New Salem has been in there for many, many years. Senator Greg Kessel from District 39, his 1st session, and both Representative Mike Schatz and Keith Kempenich have both been in there for many, many years. So it's a benefit to me and others that are serving the Southwest to have that much experience, and that those type of people that really care about their districts and the state. So a lot of the work that I've been involved with in the first few weeks has been in regard to the budget. Alan Knutson is the lead fiscal analyst for the North Dakota Legislative Council, and he's got I call it a grocery list of 23 items that leadership needs to figure out but the way I'm going to approach this is to visit with a Republican caucus, always keep them involved and educated as to what we're doing at every step of the way. We've had many speakers come and visit our caucus. We've never had that before, at least since I've been in the legislature. So the more education, the better. So we'll be deciding, as you'll see, leadership did decide on the forecast for the next biennium, and that's $70 barrel of oil. The first year of the biennium is $65. The second year of the biennium, and keeping the production at $1.1 million barrels a day. And so that was in the middle between the Moody's forecast, which is the governor's forecast, and then S&P Global, which is the legislative branch's forecast. So a lot of things going on, keeps us hopping, but the behavioral health program that Representative Steiner talked about, there are 6 people on that, and it's all District 37 reps. Vicky's been working hard on it. David Richter from Williston, Dean Rummel from Dickinson, Jim Jonas from West Fargo. They're all former school board presidents, putting together a great proactive behavioral health plan in our schools for our children, because the generations that are the young generations now, the millennials and Generation Z, are the most stressed and anxiety-filled generations in history. And you have a large number of suicides that's growing, and so we really need to take care of our young people. In addition to that, we've worked hard to help bring Heartview Foundation here to Dickinson. They'll be opening up here, I think, within a few months. And we have a plan that we've been working on for close to 2 years now on behavioral health, 10 beds at the Dickinson Hospital, 10 beds at the Williston Hospital. So we're working very hard to get those in Dickinson. So if you have the combination of Heartview, behavioral health in schools, behavioral health as a component of the hospital, those are all very important points for this area. So what I'd like to do is talk about some of the things that I've been involved with, and I want to start out with the Tenure with Responsibilities Act because I think it's misunderstood as to what is being attempted here. Now, there was a provision in this bill that I'm amending out of the bill, and that is inadvertently harming the institution, quote, especially in avoiding the use of social media or third-party internet platforms to disparage campus personnel or the institution, end quote. I'm going to have that amended out so that will not be part of the bill going forward. And so for those that think, I'm a strong supporter, as we all are, of Dickinson State University. I support the administration, the faculty, the staff, everybody at Dickinson State. I'm a strong supporter of everyone there. The growth that this university has had, from about 1,100 some students to almost 1,500, didn't happen because of no work. Everybody there has done a fantastic job, in my opinion, in getting this university to grow, knowing what the trends are, getting involved in a new mission, dual mission. That's a big change. So we've got to move the university from where it's been traditionally to a dual mission concept. And the university's been heavily involved in their Career and Tech Academy and getting those programs. So we have the training, the education here. So the Tenure with Responsibilities Act I've been thinking about for many, many years. And what it does is for tenured professors, there's 11 bullet points. And I want to go through those. And I told you what I'm going to take out of the bill. But number one, generate more revenue than your position costs the university. Number two, comply with the policies of the institution. Number three, teach and advise a number of students approximately equal to the average campus faculty teaching and advising load. Average. Number four, help recruit and retain students. And some might say, well, that's not my job. It's everybody's job. The universities of the future need to be lean and mean and have everybody on board. My son is a professor at University of Mary in Arizona, but he teaches classes and he also has a recruiting goal. And look at how University of Mary has grown also. It's everybody's job to grow the university. Help students achieve academic success. Further the best interests of the institution. Perform all other duties outlined in any applicable contract. The president of the institution may review the performance of any or all duties and responsibilities. The review may include a written assessment of whether the faculty member is complying with the policy. Number 10, a review of this section is not reviewable by a faculty member or faculty committee. I don't believe in shared governance. I believe the president of the university is the one that leads the institution, with input, but not shared governance. The president of the university is subject to review and assessment by the chancellor and the State Board of Higher Education. I'd love to know what's egregious about these 11 bullet points, and I'll be happy to pass them out for you. So if you're a tenured professor and you look at this, and you're objectionable to it, it makes me wonder why. If you're doing your job and you're helping the university grow, you have nothing to fear here. But I am going to work hard at getting this passed. Another component. We're going to be working on challenge grants. The university system has $24 million in its budget for challenge grants. There's 50 million, the governor has 50 million, the university system has 24. I'm going to do all I can to make that number as high as we possibly can. because you got Ty Orton back there, who's done a phenomenal job as director of the foundation, taking it from 0 to in the 20 million. I'd like you guys to give Ty a hand. I also want you to know it's difficult for me to say nice things about Ty in public, but just done a fantastic job. So when you take the foundation, the administration, the faculty, the staff at Dickinson State, you've got something. So this 10-year plan puts it in a business operation perspective. So the challenge grants will provide an opportunity for the university to grow even more. As Ty has explained to me, that matching provides a lot more scholarship money. 1,473 students. Just a few years ago, we're at 1,100. President Easton, you're doing a hell of a job. Let's give him a hand. $350 students growth in the last few years. That doesn't happen by accident. This university is going to continue to grow. Career and Tech Academy. Mr. Aaron Anderson, he was there this week supporting us to get dollars for CTE and to add to the board of the CTEs. Thank you, Aaron. In the House, we pushed out nearly $70 million so that the CTEs across the state, 13 projects across the state. That's how this education component is skyrocketing. And we need to make sure we understand the data. What are our young people studying? So the dual mission of Dickinson State working with CTE is going to make this university grow even more. $69 million. In addition to that, we had another bill that adds to CTE boards. Now it's public schools. But a university official or college, the private sector can also be on the board, as well as, what's the third one? I'm getting old. Parochial school, thank you very much. Because all of these components are important to the success of CTEs. Over the past several years, $80 million has been donated in-kind dollars, and look what's happened here in Dickinson. We're going to grow like crazy, and it's only because of positive attitudes of the people in this community. This week, leadership will be talking with the director of OMB on state employee raises. They have done a great job at a task force the last several years talking about state employee salaries and where they need to be. We need to be competitive in the marketplace so that our state employees stay, that our turnover rate drops. So we're looking at a $90 million market adjustment. Additionally, the governor's looking at 6% and 4% increases, so we'll be discussing those items this week. Workforce. In the Legacy Streams bill that was released just recently, there's a lot of components to it. And Representative Paul Thomas from Velva, he's the chair of our Ag Committee, has done a phenomenal job in moving the plan for animal agriculture forward. The state of South Dakota is eating our lunch when it comes to animal agriculture. They have 4 million head of cattle. We have less than half that. Dairy is almost non-existent. Raising chickens, almost non-existent in North Dakota. And swine, almost non-existent in North Dakota. So there'll be a press conference on Thursday announcing the Next Generation Agricultural Act. That limits it to 160 acres and promoting animal agriculture within the state of North Dakota. This also provides so many synergies. If you're a farmer and you produce corn or feed for cattle, and your next door neighbor has a lot of cattle, they're going to be your biggest customer. Ron Offit, who has several huge herds of cattle in Oregon and Texas, said he would open up a big cattle ranch here in North Dakota, or multiple. So these are kind of things that are forward thinking that I'm proud to have been a part of. Workforce. We've been working with the Department of Commerce, DPI, Career and Tech Academies, Job Service, various chambers, North Dakota University System, on watching this grow. We need to retain and recruit workforce. We don't have enough bodies in North Dakota to fill all the jobs that are available now. So we got to steal them from somewhere else. So we're going to be aggressive in our recruiting nationwide. PERS, Representative Steiner talked about that a little bit. Representative Steiner was on the interim committee as well. I have a deep concern about the PERS defined benefit plan and the sustainability. What's happening right now is that the unfunded liability has grown. Right now, we're just under 65% funded, which, while there's no immediate danger, we're in about the worst shape of any state in the country. It's down to Hawaii and North Dakota for the worst. So in the bill, we have a $250 million cash infusion. We have $48.2 million from the legacy streams last time that will be injected on July 1st, unless we change that, and I hope we don't. In the legacy streams bill, there's another $70 million. Because we want this plan to be solvent. We want it to be healthy. We want every employee who's worked for the state of North Dakota to get their retirement checks until the last retiree has gotten their last retirement check. The defined contribution plan lines up exactly with the generations that are taking over the workforce now. Within a few years, 75% of the workforce will be millennial and Gen Z. They do not want defined benefit. They want defined contribution because they move from job to job to job, and they want to take their retirement plan with them. We're lining up exactly with that. So if we have compensation, retirement, and best practices defined contribution plan, that should slow the rate of turnover. So those are things that we're working on that we believe will be beneficial to the state of North Dakota. So I thank you for joining us today, and I'll stick around for questions.
Getting ready to turn it over to you for questions, but we've had a goal all along that District 39 be represented. We do have Greg Kessel with us ahead of schedule, and we're going to briefly give him an opportunity to introduce himself. Please welcome Greg Kessel, Senator, Representative.
Senator. Thank you. I apologize. Next weekend I committed to a working group on Saturday, so I couldn't be here, so I called, and if I had a few minutes, I just touched base on where we're at. These guys touched on a lot of important issues. I sit on the Industry and Business Committee and the Energy and Natural Resources Committee. I guess one of the big things this coming week that we got facing us is we're having hearings on CO2 and carbon sequestering and enhanced oil recovery and everything that goes along with that. I think it's imperative that the message that we send, listening to the problems that are moving forward with that we send the right message to the industry out there. There's billions of dollars of investment dollars looking to come to North Dakota, and they're watching how we're handling this and how we're moving it forward. We want to make sure that the people that in the oil fields, that all the pipelines and everything done there, that what happens in these hearings we got coming this week, which we have 2 days, I think we're listening to 8 different bills, all the way from eminent domain to amalgamation to enhanced oil recovery to sequestering. We're listening to all them bills. How we handle that and how we manage that, again, sends a message to industry to come out. And there's billions of dollars of investment money that's looking at coming into North Dakota. So we got a very big week ahead of us, and I guess I just needed to touch on that because how we manage this, oil pays 50% of the bills. We got to treat them right, and we got to be able to bring this new industry in, our new frontier. We're concerned about increased gas, natural gas coming up. How are we going to manage that? How can we introduce new business to the area and do that? How do we handle the infrastructure needs for that? Can we provide enough water to these folks that are coming in? There's an awful lot going on. We just need to do this right. We do not need another DAPL on our hands. So we need to, it's very important how we manage this moving forward. I know my time is short. I just wanted to talk about that a little bit, and hopefully I'll be back and talk about some other things later on, but I'll be around for questions as well. Thank you.
Okay. The remainder of the time until noon belongs to you, the community, for public questions and comments. Probably looking to cap your question or comment at 3 minutes. A show of hands right now would be helpful to me if you would like the opportunity to speak. A show of hands, I'm going to hand you a card from a deck of cards, which is like my way of giving you a spot in line without making you stand in a line to ask your question. I will be bringing you a microphone. That's for the sake of the consolidated recording of our forum today. Hands in the air if you'd like the opportunity to speak. Okay? I'll make my way around the room. Keep your hands in the air, and here we go.
Okay, while he's doing that, I have a minute to talk about, we did pass a tax break for a distribution pipeline gas line for northeast North Dakota. As you know, there isn't natural gas going up there. It's mostly propane. And it's not the big line that would take gas from the Bakken over. It's the distribution lines that would come down from that line and feed like Rugby and the small communities in that area. So if you don't have natural gas in the northeast part of North Dakota, that gave them a 15-year tax break to come in and take some of the cost off that distribution of that pipeline. But we still need to work on the major line. So if you heard we did a pipeline tax break, it was not for the main line, it was for the distribution down to the small cities. So we still need that other piece before that finishes. Thank you.
So 5 hands in the air, continue hands in the air if you'd like to get in line. Question number 1. Right here.
Representative Lefor, am I right?
You are heard on the consolidated report. Okay.
Somebody that couldn't be here kind of gave me an idea for this. Dickinson Press reported that President Easton violated at least 7 North Dakota laws when he funneled a procurement contract to some of his former colleagues in Wyoming. This was only made known to the people of North Dakota through work of employees of DSU, including tenured faculty. Well, why, you like to say why a lot, why would you support or introduce a bill that would allow President Easton to take retaliation against people that brought to light his illegal behavior?
First of all, President Easton has addressed this, and it was a mistake. But I have no problem with moving this bill forward because of the fact that I have some serious concerns about some faculty members at Dickinson State who will do anonymous complaints to a ridiculous level. If you want to have the conversation, let's have it face to face like we're having it right now. You said illegal acts. He made a mistake. The level that you think it is and that I think it is far different. None of us is perfect. But at the end of the day, I have a tremendous amount of faith in President Easton and his ability to work with staff. He's done it. He's made the university grow. I have no problem. I am not worried even a little bit about him taking retaliation. President Easton will look at you. Now, look, I'm going to answer your question. I'm going to answer your question.
He's already done it. He's already done it, so don't tell me you don't believe he'll do it.
Well, we're not going to agree. We're not going to agree. I have strong support for President Easton and the job that he's done here at Dickinson State. You may disagree. So I believe this bill is needed and necessary to put the President Easton and the presidents of the universities are the ones that go to the legislature to get funding. They're the ones that are called out on the carpet. They should have the ability to make good decisions moving the university forward. This university has grown by 350 students in the last several years. It's going in the right direction. The CTE, the dual mission, all those things. I couldn't disagree with you more.
Here to give an opportunity for questions, comments from the public. We provided the 3 minutes. We do have folks in the room offline beyond noon who can continue the conversation. I lost card number 2. Help me out. Where do we go next? Thank you.
Thank you, Carter. First of all, I just want to make a comment about income taxes because I know that taxes was pretty much the focus of today's subject. I am not in favor of reducing our income taxes, and I know this comes up almost every single session. Our taxes are cheap compared to the state of Minnesota where I was raised and, still pay some taxes. So anyway, where I think we need to deal with are the people who will benefit from the funds that we have. And those that you're cutting taxes for can still afford to pay the taxes. I'm sorry, I can pay my taxes. The people who need it and are not going to see any benefit from this at all are those standing in line at the Amen Food Pantry, those standing in line at House of Manna. They need some reprieve. Even our tax credit that we had, the $350 per person, make that a refundable credit. Help these people. I'm afraid if we reduce our income taxes, other things are going to go up and they're just going to pay more. They're going to pay more in fees. There might be sales tax increases, those sort of things. And so I'm hoping that that doesn't happen. Now that's my comment. Then I have a question that's completely unrelated, but thank you, Vicky. And you can probably take both at the same. But the other question I have, and it's something that we haven't talked about yet today, are some bills relating to the state auditor's office. There's about 3 things that I see happening out there. The first one is funding for his office, which is fine. But the second, it seems there's going to be more overreach on who he can audit. And the third is that this House Bill 1407 has to do with auditing elections by the state auditor's office. I'm sorry, I feel that that is definitely an overreach. I think our election officials in this state are doing a fabulous job. So that's my question.
I'll just speak briefly on the income tax. Studies show that young people respond to zero income tax for whatever reason. I know older people or some people in different political parties disagree that we should look at income tax as something the state should reduce. We have a $3 billion surplus, and with the flat income tax, we just don't ask you to pay it in. So it is tax relief. It's with tax credits, and of course you come from the CPA world, but and we've seen that where we have a CPA Republican legislator who didn't like the flat tax because it didn't have tax credits. So I think it's just, it could be the way you think about taxes, and we could do a tax credit, and we have done tax credits in the past, but the state has the money, and we shouldn't ask you for more money when the state has the money. And I know I said it last session, it gets annoying, but the state is not in a situation where we need to tax you, so we're not going to. So we're going to still tax you some, but we're not going to tax you to the level we did last year because we don't need the money. So I know at some point, maybe they will need the money. And like I said, trust me, they will tax you when they need it. But they don't need it for next year and the next year and probably the next 2 years. So with income tax, you can argue, should you have people pay in and then we give you a tax credit. For politicians, tax credits are better because then you see the tax credit and you think, wow, I like these people. But with this, you probably are going to forget that we did it, and we won't get as much credit. So from a politician's world, tax credits work better, but we don't need the 500 million. In fact, I don't think I'd like to see the number higher, because we would get better results from a lower income tax, from zero income tax, than we do from a reduced income tax. But I didn't win that argument. So anyway, on that one, and just wanted to make that comment. Thank you.
I just wanted to add, I'm not sure why the state auditor audited the election. Does anybody else here know that? So he
So
must.
it's a bill coming up.
No, he's already audited.
No, it's the new House bill.
No, it's
Oh, the
it's
House
a new
bill.
bill. It'll be in
Oh.
GBA.
Okay, well then,
Yeah, we haven't seen it yet.
okay. I thought she was talking.
Whoops, sorry. No, we have not. I don't think we've had the hearing on it yet. But, whether or not, we'll see what happens. I'm in Government and Veterans Affairs. We're seeing a lot of election bills. We just changed a bill we had a really large election bill last session, and we just did a tweak on that. And we changed it to, instead of electronic voting, electronic tabulation. We took electronic out because it could be some local election boards may want to go to paper counting at some point. So we have a lot of pressure from the public coming in saying, could we go to paper ballots? We don't trust the machines. So we're trying to figure out if that's something we can let local people decide. If they want to sit and count paper ballots, it's just going to take longer to get the totals. But anyway, we've made a few tweaks, but I don't think we've had the auditor bill before us yet. And I had to be gone I had a couple bills I was testifying on. It is possible it was heard, and I was out testifying on my bill. So without seeing the bill, or looking up the bill on my computer, I don't know that for sure, but I'll watch for it.
That might be a topic that could be brought back at a future session. We'll move question number 3 here.
Matt Rostein, resident Dickinson. Mr. Lefor, hopefully I said your name correctly. This is just, I read your 1446. I just have a couple questions, maybe clarification.
Shoot.
On section 2, number 2, a review under subsection 1 may include a written assessment. My background, military, safety, I'm very much into verbiage. Why would you say must versus may? And then my second question is...
Well, one at a time. I'm old.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I'm old.
Yep.
I'm, like I said, because of some discussions that I've had recently, I'm already going to make an amendment to this bill. So I'm going to listen to what you're having to say. It may include, I think the reason I wanted to give the presidents the option that they don't necessarily have to do it. It depends on how small the difference is, but tell me why you believe it should be must.
With my background, going through counseling, going through reviews, you have to have the information documented to be able to discipline or perform some type of review with that individual. A document to get rid of to discipline a soldier, my packets would have to be 1 inch to 3 inches, documentation.
Okay.
If I read this right, it talks that if an individual, the president feels and goes through whatever their process is to, I'm not better words, get rid of a professor, shouldn't it be documented?
That's a good point.
Okay.
I will certainly look at changing that. And, with the focus on getting rid, when you say that, that's not my goal here.
Bad words.
No, not a problem. It's simply to make all people who work for the universities accountable and have responsibilities. So that's where I'm going. I'm not looking at getting anybody fired. I just want to have a good business organization, because in the future, universities are going to have to be lean and mean to be competitive. Go ahead. Second question.
Totally agree.
I'll listen. Thank you. That's actually a good point.
My second one was, Section 2, number 6. A review under this section is not appealable or reviewable by a faculty member or a faculty committee. Are you saying that the individual who is being reviewed and possibility of being let go cannot appeal?
No. I'm just saying they can't appeal to a faculty member or faculty committee. They can certainly, if I need to adjust this, I want them to have the availability to appeal, but to the higher ed system.
Just the way I was reading
Okay.
it threw me off.
Well, no, I'll write that down also. No, they should have the right of appeal.
Perfect. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good points.
To whom would they appeal?
To the chancellor or the Board of Higher Education. I'll take a look at that.
Mike, there is something called the Faculty Rights Committee
Mm-hmm.
that is, that they currently, you have to eliminate that in the handbook. Because they currently have a right to do that. Can I make one other point on that?
Sure.
Does that work? Hello? Oh, okay. The first item in there suggests that each professor must generate enough tuition income and other income to pay for their salaries, fringe benefits, and anything else.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with that is, when I was teaching, I was taught mass classes typically, and so I would have 600 to 700 students a year. So, but on the other hand, if I went over to agriculture, I might have a professor who was tenured who was only teaching a few students because the nature of their education and their relationships to their students are very different because of the demands of their subject, and I think that's a mistake. You have to think of the college as, or the community of faculty as a community, and it's organic, some cover for others. And I think it's a mistake to make that thing apply to everybody. Generally, if your balance sheet is okay, then that covers it.
Okay, thank you.
I hate to help you improve that.
I know that.
I'm hearing a second draft is in the works, so conversation can continue after the event as well. Question number 4.
Thank you, Carter. James Oderman is my name. I'm a proud alum of Dickinson State, and you can tell by the color of my hair it was probably long before any of these problems existed. But just from a statistical perspective, 350 student increase is a 30% increase in enrollment. And I think the folks that are running that institution from that perspective, yes, they might make some minor mistakes, but I think they need to be applauded. And I know I've told this to Dr. Easton many times. Thank you for your job. My question has to deal with House Bill 1286. And we're blessed to have 3 of those sponsors on that bill here. And what it has to deal with is the removal of the trigger for the oil production tax. And that was a trigger that was set on when the price got to a certain level, there was an additional tax placed. According to the information that I received via the internet from the, I'm not sure, just a second, The tax department, Brian Bittner, indicated that this is $135 and change million change. And what I'd really like to do is have the individuals who are here who sponsored this legislation or proposed this bill address that and talk to us about what was the logic behind that and how it could affect us and where we're going in terms of moving forward with this, perhaps, with this piece of legislation. House Bill 1286, and I see Senator Kessel, Representative Lefor, and Senator Schaible. I don't think you're on that bill, though, but Senator Rummel is on that bill.
It's taking the trigger off
With the oil trigger, I'm sure most of you can remember that over the years we've had oil booms and busts. We want to make sure that our tax policy is fair to these businesses, because in other states the oil tax taxes are lower. So when you talk about Oklahoma and Texas, two of the biggest plays in the United States, we want to make sure we're competitive so that when these oil companies make a decision on where to drill, that we don't lose them. And I'm not a big fan of triggers, whether it was a low trigger or a high trigger. So I think I just believe it's a good tax policy so these businesses, whatever business you're in, has the ability to know what they're going to be paying.
That's what Mike said is exactly right. The uncertainty of what their tax liabilities are when they come to the state to go ahead and do business once that trigger hits. They might have a fine line on where they need to be, and then they get taxed again. It was brought to my attention that, and if you believe it or not, but there was two businesses that came to town and they looked at that, and that was the deciding factor between us and another state to go in and do it. The certainty behind what their taxes were going to be.
Carter, if I could follow up with a question on that. And the question that I would have to Senator Kessel and Representative Lefor is this. These folks aren't here because they're looking for a sunburn or a suntan. The $135 million that they're getting or paying in addition to the trigger is only 6% of what their total revenue source is. So the question that I'm having is, yes, it's affecting their revenue, but 94% of that total value is going into their coffers. So I'm trying to figure out, why are we quibbling over 6% when they're getting 94% of that revenue, and it's having a negative impact on us to the point of $135 million if the trigger's in effect?
Well, I'm going to put it in terms like this. You raise cattle. If you got taxed for every dollar you sold, you gave 10% in tax on your beef away, that's a pretty high number. When I look at what's going on in the state and the amount of money that industry has brought into the state and afforded us the luxuries that we have, an example being, I heard last night that I believe it was southeast of here, they had power outages because of the frost on the lines and stuff. Since the oil field came here, I don't think Western North Dakota has had to deal with stuff like that. They paid enough money in. We got good, reliable power lines and stuff. If it took the 1% to entice more of this business to come in and stay here and invest more, I think it's only fair to them that we try to work with them and get rid of the uncertainty when they come here and invest more money in what we're doing. They have the trigger. We're looking at some new industries coming in. Again, I'm going to relate to the CO2 thing, which has the potential to be huge. Are we going to put triggers in place for them? Or are we going to be a state that is going to be business friendly? This is what it is. You pay your taxes, and hopefully it stays even, and we can keep that investment coming in. I just don't like the fact of the uncertainty in this, and I mean, that industry has paid more than their fair share to do an awful lot for the state of North Dakota.
Question here, front row.
Hi, my name is Chris Kaman. I'm the president of Chasing Horses Wild Horse Advocates. We're a nonprofit group here in Dickinson that advocates for the horses in Theodore Roosevelt National Park. And I want to thank you guys for all being here today and also for taking my phone calls. I know I've talked to a lot of you at great length about the park's decision to eliminate all the horses in the park. I also know that our organization is working with our state legislators, and we have a resolution that was drafted that we submitted that has gone into formal drafting, I understand. And I also know that Representative Boucher has asked the park for an extension on the comment period so that our state legislators can get a formal response to the park, either in the form of a resolution or a letter, just expressing their concerns. I do want to thank you guys and thank also the Dickinson Chamber. Last week I was here and we asked questions too, and I want to let you know that followers all over social media are very happy to hear the state of North Dakota is really trying to help us advocate for keeping these horses in the park. And I just wanted to see if anyone had anything to share from your point of view on what's happening now, your hopes for the resolution, or any words of wisdom to the businesses in Medora that are deeply concerned about.
Words of wisdom, no. But what I will say is that Representative Boucher did let me know that he's moving this resolution forward. And I can't imagine, well, not speaking for everybody, but I'll strongly support it because I don't understand the decision. Because when you go, and we have grandkids and they want to see the wild horses, they want to see the buffalo. So I will strongly advocate for that, as I'm sure my fellow legislators here will as well.
First of all, Chris, I've seen the language that you crafted for the revolution or for the resolution, and I want to thank you for crafting that. It's an excellent piece. I don't know why the Park Service wants to take the horses out, or the longhorn cattle for that matter, but I want to thank you for crafting that legislation, getting it down there, and I do know that it's up in Legislative Council now being crafted and built in a bill format. But thank you.
I as well. I live next to the park. I've seen them my whole life. I watched the horse. I like to see the horses in the park. They've been there for as long as I can remember. With that being said, I'll be critical of the Park Service. I think they mismanaged the horses. There's too many horses in the park. I think there should be a line where they should be managed and they should stay there. Their reasoning is when it gets out of hand, they just want to get rid of it. I guess there's legislation coming in, but the other thing that I say, you as individuals writing letters and doing that has a huge impact on them as well. So I would, along with the legislation that's moving forward, write letters, send letters, express your opinions on that. And understand that they have mismanaged some stuff in there as well. So, thank you.
Yes, ditto, and thank you for taking the lead on that. I just wanted to let you know my husband was buying a T-shirt this morning for our daughter. So I think that will help you raise some funds for your effort, and thank you for your work.
Last call, questions, comments from the public.
I have one more question.
Okay, we'll follow up. We have time remaining.
I'm using this as learning for myself. In your House Bill 1446, let me get to it. I'm just trying to understand what it means by Section 3 emergency. This act is declared to be an emergency measure.
I'm sorry, where are you?
Section 3, the very bottom.
Oh, the emergency measure. That just makes, if typically the, you lost. The legislature, when the legislature passes legislation, it doesn't become law until August 1st. There are several bills that go through the Legislative Assembly that provide for an emergency clause. The emergency clause, if passed, now it has to be 2/3 of the House, 2/3 of the Senate, and the governor's signature to make it law when the governor signs it. So the emergency clause just moves it up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Last call, one more time. Questions, comments?
So I would again like to ask Representative Lefor concerning the Bill 1446. Could he explain By the way, I guess everybody's announced the name. I'm Paul Johansson. I am a tenured professor at DSU. I am also president of their faculty senate, which sounds like it'll mean nothing shortly. You mentioned state employees and how we need to keep the state employee pay up to attract, keep our
Correct.
state employees. How does this bill help us recruit and retain quality educators? Because most of them I'm talking to are saying, I would have never applied for this job if this was what I had seen.
Well, I don't see things the way that you do.
Yeah, but we're not trying to attract you to come teach either.
No, I wouldn't be capable. But at the end of the day, recruitment and retention comes to me in compensation, in benefits. No, hey, can I answer your question without you making a face? I listen to your question. I'll show you respect. But I have no interest in answering your question if you want to sit there and roll your eyes. At the end of the day, a good business model, as we're talking about today, means all hands on deck to make a better university. And if you're growing as a university as this one is, and you have a lot of credit for that, I credit you for that hard work. The Career and Tech Academy, the dual mission and things like that, we have to do these things to be competitive in the future. I am absolutely convinced, and I don't think your fears of retribution are well-founded. I'm not concerned about that. I've had several conversations with President Easton. This was my idea, not his. But I truly believe that people sit down and have communications with each other. The items in this bill, to me, are benign and they're basic business policy. How do you grow an institution when you have to go to the university system as a president and justify your expenses when you don't have a lot of say on certain provisions within the university system? I am hopeful, as I've always been hopeful, that this university will grow and be successful. Not every university is going to be successful in the future. I'm convinced of that. So we have to have that dialogue. I'd love to have that dialogue with you. I don't believe there's going to be retribution, and I say that today. I don't believe there'll be retribution. Let's talk in about a year to see where this actually goes. I am behind Dickinson State University. I'm behind you, Dr. Johansson. I want to see the university grow.
You know, one person, okay, we do have another question. One person we've pretty much left off the hook in terms of fielding questions is Senator Schaible, District 31. Hope you're comfortable there.
Hi, Liz Friedman, addressing the same tenure bill. One of the portions of it refers to the number of students taught and the amount of revenue brought in based on that. But not everyone can teach at average or above average numbers. That's not the way the averages work. Upper level classes have smaller enrollments because they are more specialized. And so professors that teach more of these upper level classes are going to naturally have fewer students. But these upper level classes are essential for our majors. They are the classes that students take as juniors and seniors that help specialize them towards their degrees. And without these upper level classes, we won't be able to offer bachelor's degrees. We could only do associates. This would push professors away from teaching upper level classes. It would take students away from DSU because we wouldn't be offering as many of these upper level classes.
I don't see how you see that. At the end of the day, the president of the university is not going to say we're going to eliminate these programs so we can eliminate bachelor's degrees. I'm not following your line of thinking at all. If there's a professor that teaches 5 students and you need that program, that's up to the president to decide. There's some flexibility in here. And let me read a section for you. The compensation costs of a tenured faculty member must be adjusted to reflect the faculty member's assumption of administrative responsibilities and related lessening of the faculty member's teaching responsibilities where applicable. Now, I will tell you this, that if you want to work with me on wording for this, I'm happy to do it. This is not, I'm going to come after professors bill. That's not what this does. So I'm happy to take a look at what wording you would like to have in here, because I'm open to conversations about these things. So I think this bill is really being misconstrued. There's no way that I would ever bring forth a bill that would lower the amount of bachelor's degrees that Dickinson State would have, or Bismarck State. So if we have to have wording in there that says there's flexibility based on the program need, I'll be happy to take a look at that.
With a little bit of time remaining, we do have former Senator Wardner in the room who wants to speak a little bit to the trigger bill that was brought up earlier.
Sorry to keep you any longer, but the educator in me says you don't know what's going on with trigger bill. Let me explain it really quickly. First of all, there are two taxes out in the oil patch. Number one is the production tax. It is a 5% tax. It was there from the 50s until 1980. In 1980, we passed Measure 6, and we put on the extraction tax, which was a 6.5%. So you put them two together, and now you have 11.5% tax on oil. We were one of the highest oil taxing states of the oil producing states. So what happened, that happened in 80, and shortly after, the price of oil plunged. Remember, we had, some of you older ones, you know we had a bust in 1984. Well, then the legislature started putting in incentives, and they put in an incentive that said, trigger, $30 a barrel. Or excuse me, it was $33 a barrel. If it's over $33 a barrel, we're going to do the production tax at 5%, but the extraction tax is going to drop to 9%. And you're going to get a 2-year holiday. That means you don't pay any extraction tax at all, and after 2 years it comes back at 9%. Or at 4% for the extraction tax, 9% total. They put it in place to encourage drilling. Well, guess what? From 87 until 2007, there wasn't any activity to even mess with. The price of oil was always less than $33 a barrel, and all of a sudden the Bakken hits, and we went over the $33 trigger. And then we were taxing the oil at 11%. And everybody said, yay, good. Those corporations are making a lot of money. And they can afford to pay it. The state was benefiting. The problem is that a lot of these companies have really narrow margins. And they were looking at Texas, they were looking at Oklahoma to spend their money. They weren't necessarily as many coming to North Dakota. So in 2017, we shaved and by the way, we allowed it to increase the trigger with inflation. It got up to $53 a barrel. Well, in 2017, the oil price was coming down. We were getting 11%, but we were in months of the trigger kicking in, and as a result, our revenues were going to really drop because guess what? The Bakken wells were going to get a 2-year holiday on the extraction tax. What did that mean? That meant they paid nothing on those wells. And how many of you understand that the Bakken wells, they start out producing high, when you get to the end of 2 years, it's gone. There isn't a lot left. So we were going to get the short end of the stick. So we negotiated and we got the extraction tax cut to 5. So we're 5 and 5 now. No triggers. Got rid of the triggers. Now the oil companies didn't like it because they could smell the bacon. They knew they were going to get a real break. However, they went along with it, And we negotiated, and the lead negotiator for the Senate was Senator Dwight Cook from Mandan. And one morning, they were dealing and messing around, trying to get something done, and one of the industry guys said, you know what? We will put a top trigger on there at $90 a barrel, because if it goes over $90 a barrel, we can afford to pay 1% more. So that's what they're talking about eliminating is, and by the way, through inflation, it's gotten up to between 95 and 96 bucks a barrel, and it was on for a while, but it's off now. We did get about 5 months where that was on, and we were getting 11, not 10, but 11%, and it made a difference. Now, the bill is to get rid of that top trigger altogether, and so it'll be just straight 10%. And I will tell you, when I was still leader, last summer, the governor called us in. He wanted to have a special session. He wanted to get rid of it. I told him, I said, a deal was made. We'll finish it out. Well, now I don't have a problem because they are absolutely correct. We are competing with Oklahoma. We're competing with New Mexico. We're competing with Texas. We're competing with Colorado to get these companies to come here. It affects this town. It affects this town. So at this time, if they get the trigger off, I'm fine with it. But that's the history of it. I wanted you to know that you're talking about a trigger. Some people don't have an idea. What's a trigger? Well, it triggers the tax from one rate to another. Thank you.
Have that be the closing remark. I want to give a preview. Let's give a preview of what we have upcoming. Okay, 7 more of these, including next week. Now, we will continue to rotate districts 36, 37, 39. This is tentative. Tentatively, Lieutenant Governor Tammy Miller. And then let's look at our speaker lineup for the remaining sessions. We have John Gottfried, Randy Chrisman, Josh Gallion, Dr. Andrea, and I'm sorry, pronunciation on her last name, but topic will be water at that session. We have the Superintendent of the Department of Public Instruction, Kirsten Baszler, coming, and we end with Lynn Helms on March 25th. A great lineup in store. We hope you'll come back. Some of those items are tentative. We might sub in and out as needed. As for today, thank you for coming. Stick around if you'd like.
The Lieutenant Governor was coming next week. She can't make it. So I'm going to be hustling around getting some people in her place. I'll tell you who I'd like to get, and that's the head of the State Investment Office to talk about the investment of the legacy fund and those types of things, because a lot of people are upset because we're invested in China or we're invested in Russia, and she will be able to explain all of it. I still have to get that individual lined up. So this cat will be hustling around.
Stay tuned for next week's lineup. It'll be on dickinsonchamber.org. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.